I'm Helen Shield. Welcome to Conducting an Experiment. Please, I need a show of hands. Okay, be honest with me. If you have... Oh, thank you. Spontaneous crowd participation. That is a good sign for what's coming this evening. There's a lot of enthusiastic crowd participation required. But show me a hand if you have ever looked up at somebody conducting an orchestra and thought, I could probably do that. How hard could it be? Yeah, how hard could it be? You're going to find out tonight. Tonight you will find out with bitter experience. No, in one way, your maestro tonight might seem a little intimidating, that she is one of 10 participants in the Orchestra of the Americas 2022 Carlos Miguel Prieto Conducting Fellowship. I don't even understand what that is. It's so impressive. She is a 2021 Rosemary and John Hopkins Award winner for conductors to create a high school conducting academy in conjunction with the University of Melbourne. She can even teach children to do this. You will be fine. She has been up the front of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra. But maybe most importantly tonight is not just knowing what an expert Ingrid Martin is, but it's also knowing that a major part of her ethos is about accessibility, is breaking down what it is to be a conductor and making music and what it is to make it available to the greatest number of people possible. Tonight, that greatest number of people expands to include you. Don't be afraid to try this. Lisa Miller had a go on live national television a few days ago with her, so you've got nothing to be scared of. She will break down the art and the science and the faces they're really pulling while they've got their backs turned to you up the front of that orchestra and get you in on them. Welcome to Conducting an Experiment. Please welcome the maestro, Ingrid Martin.
When I tell people that I'm a conductor, usually the first thing they say is, oh, of trains? And then when I say, no, I actually conduct musical ensembles, they say exactly what you thought. Oh, I reckon anyone could do that. Looks pretty easy. Like, do they even need you? As you just heard, an ensemble like this doesn't need me because they're so fabulous. But what I tell them is, yes, they do, and that's what we're going to be exploring tonight. My name's Ingrid Martin, as Helen said, and I'm a conductor, and I've been conducting for nearly 20 years. When I started conducting, I was also studying something else. I was learning to be a doctor. And what's fascinating to me are the parallels between the work that I did as an emergency doctor and the work that I now do as a conductor. The first thing that they have in common is people. Medicine's all about people, and so is music. And when you're talking about a large ensemble like a band or an orchestra like the TSO or a choir, that's a lot of people. And so like any leader of a large team, a sports coach or a CEO, the conductor's job is really to inspire the best out of the people around them, particularly when we're doing something that's under pressure. To do it, you need to really understand people and how they work and how they think. And a lot of that I learned during my time in medicine. When I was in the emergency department, I was sitting across from people in some of the most difficult moments of their lives. And my job was to learn how to respond to them with compassion and empathy at that really difficult time. And conducting is not really that different. You mightn't think that playing on stage, these people that have been doing it for probably their whole life, is very challenging or stressful. But when you come up through a training system that can be pitched towards get it right or die, and then you get up here and you have to do this all the time, it's pretty challenging. And sometimes you could be the one person in the orchestra, like when Tim's got a big tuba solo, and you're the only person playing that bit, and there's 80 or 100 other people all relying on you, and you're in the spotlight. Pretty terrifying, right? So the conductor's job is to help people in those moments to rise beyond the occasion, beyond their fear, and deliver an amazing musical experience for the audience. One of the most critical elements of the interaction between conductor and ensemble is trust. And we have to build trust really quickly. Because you can imagine if you're in the emergency department and you meet a doctor, you're not really going to tell them what's going on if you don't trust them. And it's the same on stage with an ensemble. This week I had my first ever performances with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, which was really amazing and also terrifying for me. And we only met each other on Wednesday. We had about 5 hours of rehearsal together. Then we did 2 performances on Thursday and another performance this morning. It's not very much time to get to know each other and get everyone to a place where they feel like they can be vulnerable and put themselves out there and bare their musical soul. So the conductor really has to know how to build trust with the ensemble as quickly as possible. One of the other things that unites music and medicine is problem solving. When I got up in front of the MSO, apart from being terrified, I had to put my terrified feelings aside and put all of my senses on high alert to listen to what was coming back at me from the ensemble, just in the same way that a doctor has to really listen to a patient. And as well as thinking about what my body is doing, which is not that tricky, you'll learn how to do it in a little bit, I'm trying to work out, is the sound that is coming to me the same as the musical template that I have in my head? Because as conductors, believe it or not, most of our job is solitary. It's me sitting in a room with a piece of music and just looking at it. Or jumping on Wikipedia or going to the library and trying to do all my background research on the music. We spend hours and hours learning how the music goes and doing this research to come up with this idea of how we think the music should sound. And when we stand up on stage in front of the ensemble, we're trying to work out, is the image that I have fitting with the sound that is coming back at me? So the first step, just like a doctor, is diagnosis. What are the problems going on here? And what do I need to change in the sound of the music to try and get these two things to line up with each other? And usually those are different kind of tweaks that we make. Some of them might be non-verbal. I change something in what I'm doing in my body language to try and change the sound of the ensemble. And sometimes, probably too often, we stop and talk. We'll talk more about how much conductors love talking, as you can tell, a little bit later on. But we try and solve those musical problems. We try and find a prescription to get these two things closer together. Then we've got to listen like crazy and see if we chose the right prescription. See if the solution that we tried out works or not. And keep comparing those two musical versions, our template to what we're hearing. And hopefully, in our usually very short rehearsal time, if it's with a professional ensemble, we can get those things to line up as closely as possible. But we go through that process of diagnose, prescribe, and review over and over again. So when you come to a performance of, say, the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, you are just seeing the tip of the iceberg. All of that preparation, the alone time, the diagnosis, the prescription, and the treatment has all happened in the days and months and weeks maybe leading up to that one moment where you see the person going, "Oh, I reckon I could do that." So there's a little bit more behind it than just the waving of the arms. We go through our process and we do all of that research and preparation in that quest to try and get that template as being what the composer intended. Now, lots of the composers that we play aren't around anymore. So there's usually a lot left to chance. And we're going to talk about that, or less to our personal interpretation. Sometimes we're really lucky and we get to play the music of living composers, and I can send them an email or an Instagram message and say, oh, in that bar 25, did you want that note to be short or long? But lots of the time we have to figure out those little problems for ourselves. But what do we mean when we say what the composer intended? Let's step behind the curtain and think about how we get from a brand new piece of music that I might never have seen before to the performance. We're going to go on that musical journey together. A piece of music is just like a text. You probably read Shakespeare in your high school English class, or like had to recite a poem or something, and you had to, put your personal stamp on it, come up with some kind of dramatic recitation. Who's done that before? Had to do your Macbeth or something, or you were just really embarrassed and no one spoke. That's usually what happens in a high school English class. In music, it's very similar. We've got our text, and it gives us a lot of information, but there's also a lot of room for interpretation from the performers. So that's where all that research comes in, of trying to work out, how do I perform this text? And we want to, as conductors, not just know the individual parts, but the whole, from the big picture to the tiniest detail. And I often use the analogy of a puzzle. Playing in an orchestra is like getting one piece of the puzzle. Each of these players gets their one little part, their role to play in the music. The conductor has the score, which is like the lid of the puzzle that has the whole picture on it. We know the big picture of what's going on, but the musicians only have their one piece. And during that process of rehearsing, they have to get to know, just by listening, what that big picture is and where their one little piece fits in and how it relates to all of the other puzzle pieces. So as conductors, we've got to know not just the puzzle pieces, but where the box is taking us musically in time. So we're all going to do this together. I'm going to get everyone to stand up, and you're going to see some lines of text that you might have seen before. These are, of course, the first stanza of the famous song Danny Boy, or London Derry Air, or Irish tune from County Derry. I want you to read them silently in your head and imagine them in their perfect rendition. What do you think the writer wants us to hear in these 4 lines? Have a think about what should be brought out. How would you bring it out? If you were going to give an Oscar-winning performance of these lines, not just with your voice, but with your whole body, how would you do it? Have a think. So what I'd like you to do now is turn to the person next to you introduce yourself if you don't know them, and then you're going to take turns at performing your version. Go. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's Danny boy.
All right, fabulous Oscar winners. Have a seat. I saw lots of people getting their inner conductor warmed up then, which was very good. We would love to hear 3 different versions of these fabulous recitations. If you are willing to jump up, we've got a mic here. And what we want to listen for is, you probably heard some people around you as well as your partner, that they're all going to be very different. Have we got some volunteers? Yeah. Fabulous. What's your name? Rosie. Can we give Rosie a round of applause, everyone? Sure. Rosie, everyone, again.
I'm going to need to sort of look at the words a bit.
Go for it.
So I didn't understand that we had to sing it musically.
You don't have to sing it.
Just perform. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. 'Tis you must go and I must bide.
Now, we have not rehearsed this. I'm going to have a go at trying to translate into conducting what Rosie said with the fabulous musicians of the TSO, and here's a now fabulous moment to introduce them. We've got David, Tim, Amanda and Mitch. Can we make them welcome, please? See what happens. Something like that. Does someone have a completely different version to Rosie? Come on up. Yay!
I did think of it as singing though.
Mm-hmm.
Does that matter?
No. What's your name?
I'm Alison.
Alison, everybody.
So I had it sort of big at the start and small at the bottom. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. 'Tis you must go and I must bide.
Thanks, Rosie. Have we got one more? All right, I'm going to put Mitch on the spot here because I heard his and it was awesome.
All right, I promise I won't do the accent. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. From glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. 'Tis you must go and I must buy.
Now, I don't know how to conduct with an accent, but... So, obviously, they had a little bit of a cheat sheet because they heard our fabulous renditions and Mitch even did one. That wasn't planned, by the way. Every time I do this, someone always does a robust Scottish accent, so I always try and find that person. But obviously just then, even though they heard how it was going to go, what changed in the sound was really the body language. And so much of what conductors do is about body language and non-verbal communication. Because as we said, we're like these fly-in, fly-out workers. We're only around for a really short time, and it's way more efficient for us to communicate in gestures than to stop and say, oh, could you make that one note heavier and then that other note a little bit lighter and then that one louder and that one softer? It's much more efficient to just show it. And as we said, these guys have spent decades getting to where they are playing their instruments, and they didn't spend it to sit around and listen to conductors blabbing on about things, yes, right? They want to play. So the more that I or any conductor can show what we want without talking, the more fun the musicians are going to have and the better that relationship is going to be instantly. And we can actually change the sound while we're going along. Danny boy again. So we can ask for more, we can ask for less, we can say thank you very much, we can say no thank you, all without stopping, which makes it much more fun and much quicker to get through our problem-solving diagnosis and treatment stage of our rehearsals. So we want to get deeper into this idea of body language. Now, music is really all about emotions. And sometimes we have music that has a really obvious story to it. We call that program music. But sometimes we have music that's super abstract. It's just notes on a page. And so it's often useful to have a tool that can help us try and get to what is the emotional heart of a piece. What is the music really trying to say? And so there's this fabulous thing that I discovered during my studies called the feeling wheel, which was developed by a psychologist, Gloria Wilcox. And as you can see, we've got all sorts of things up there, the entire gamut of human emotions. And what's great about music is that it actually expresses all of these emotions. Now, I don't know about you, but you've, like me, probably got some emotions that you like expressing more than others. I know for me, I actually learnt from a conducting teacher that I'm not very good with anger. Not that I'm an angry conductor, but that I don't like expressing anger. And this came up when I was trying to conduct Beethoven 5, the very famous da-da-da-da. And he said, I think you don't like being angry. You need to go and buy a punching bag. And so what's been great for me as a musician is learning how to play and use different emotions in music has actually helped me get better as a human and a person in relationship with others at being able to recognise all the different feelings that I'm having and letting them happen and letting them out in an appropriate way, because we know that stuffing them down is really unhealthy. So music is a great way of getting out your emotions, whether you're just listening and dancing alone like nobody's watching, or playing an instrument, or conducting an ensemble. So we're going to stand up again, everyone. And we've already had some fabulous singing. We're going to do some singing together. You didn't know you were going to do that, did you? So we're going to get our first note of that famous song that everyone knows, just a B flat. And we're going to start off and join in when you realise what it is. Twinkle. The Beaker Street Choir, everybody, give yourselves a round of applause. All right, now you are going to get a conducting lesson. So one of the things we have to do as conductors is try and show the emotion in our face, in our body, and in our breath. So we're going to practice a couple of these together. We're going to practice mad first. So I want you to imagine that you've just been cut off in traffic by an awful, obnoxious driver and you are mad. Can you get that in your body and in your face? Give us your best road rage face. Okay, and as you've seen conductors, we use our arms. So what we're going to do now is the most simple conducting gesture, which is up and down. And as you breathe in, you're going to move your arm up. And as you breathe out, you're going to move your arm down. But it's got to be an angry breath. Here we go. Go again. More angry. Okay, good. Okay, the road rage is over. Now you have left beautiful, chilly Tasmania and you are on a gorgeous tropical beach and you are feeling so peaceful. Can you get that feeling of peaceful in your body? And we're going to now do the same thing of breathe in, peaceful, and breathe out, peaceful, and let your arm follow your breath. So what we're going to do now is you get to pick any word you like or any other feeling that you can think of. And in a minute, we're going to have all 120 people you're going to be singing and conducting yourself Twinkle Twinkle in your chosen emotion. So we're going to have mad twinkles and pensive twinkles and dejected twinkles and all sorts of things. It's going to be absolute madness and cacophony. Go. Yay! Just, that sounded like every happy birthday you sang on Zoom, yeah? Okay, take a seat. So that was really interesting because everyone was a bit afraid to sing, and so it all was like kind of at the same speed. We had a confident group over here. Thank you, singers over here. I've heard some people were really wanting to make their angry one quite fast. So we'd love to get some twinklers up here to do it with these guys. Can we have some volunteers? Need like 3 or 4 volunteers. Come and conduct the TSO musicians. Might never get this opportunity again. Got it. I've been promoted. What's your name?
Julian McAllister.
Julian.
And I just arrived on my bicycle.
Fantastic, Julian.
I can sing some Crowded House songs if you like. Or I could do a German song.
You can give us your best twinkle. Don't tell them what character you're doing. You're just going to conduct it to them.
Can I take my jacket?
You can. I think you'll be fine how you are. Yeah.
And maybe when I start.
It'll be great. You'll be great. So if you're going to stand back there so they can see, so the players can see you.
Okay, and what am I actually singing?
You don't have to sing anything. They're going to play for you. So you're just going what, up and down?
Like a conductor.
Correct.
You know, the sort of thing my dad used to make me do when I was a child.
Probably.
A bit of Penderecki, a bit of Mahler, a lot of Mahler, lots of Beethoven, nothing good sort of. So here we go.
I reckon you can go and find her. We're going to get another conductor up here now. Thank you for your fabulous conducting. Let's ask the audience, what emotion or feeling do you think he was going for, and what told you that? Confident? We definitely got confident. What else? Sleepy? Cool. Pensive? Can we get a different version of Twinkle? We need another volunteer. Oh, fantastic. Come on up. What's your name? Anessa. Great. The stage is yours. Do you want a stick? Yeah. Yeah.
Just up and down?
Yep.
Okay.
she was going for? Playful?
I was just enjoying holding a conductor stick for the first time. Because I used to play. I used to play in school orchestras, and it's a pretty important part to be the conductor, and you never get to touch it, so it was pretty cool.
Yay! Amazing, thank you. So someone said playful. What made you think playful? The face? What else? Yeah, the variation in tempo or the speed changing. You know, we had some slow and some fast and trying to keep the musicians on their toes. Can we have a different one? One more twinkle. Fantastic. What's your name?
I'm Evie.
Evie.
No musical experience.
Have fun. Go for it. I don't think that needs any explanation at all, but what were you going for?
Angry.
Angry? Did we get angry? Yeah, and did you hear how the quality of the sound changed? Because she was going, she had her road rage face on. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. So you can see that so much of this is about just really basic human communication. This is stuff that we do in our everyday lives all the time. We have feelings, and whether we want them to or not, they come out in our body, in our face. And so much of conducting is about amplifying those things that come naturally, so that when you're in a giant concert hall and these guys are like 20 metres away, that they can read that language as well. And on the flip side, so much of the conductor's job is also reading the body language of the people in the ensemble and trying to work out, are they going okay? What do they need from me? How can I help them as we're going along in the musical journey? We've talked about lots of different things today, but we haven't yet talked about what happens when things go wrong. And sometimes things go horribly wrong. You probably don't see that very often. Usually we're very good at hiding it. We have lots of near misses. Would that be accurate? Yep, they're all nodding and laughing. Would it be fair to say that a musician's greatest fear is that you have to stop in the middle of the performance? Right? And again, this happens so rarely, but that's like the most shameful thing that could happen, is that we have to stop and start again. But what happens is we get really close to that quite often. And the way that happens is usually we're going along in the piece of music, and sometimes it might be something really simple that everybody knows, and someone loses concentration or has a brain fog, and you miss the spot where you're supposed to come in. Or it could happen in a really complicated piece that everyone's doing for the first time and no one's really quite sure, and we haven't had enough time for everyone to feel comfortable and confident, and something comes in the wrong place or comes in too late or too early. And that's when the ensemble really needs the conductor the most. There's plenty of music that the whole TSO could play without a conductor, and they'd be fabulous, and they'd probably love it too. I'm not having that dictator up on the podium in front of them. But when things go wrong, this is when a conductor can really come into their element, because when things start to fall apart, we have to make a whole lot of split-second decisions. It's a bit like being, a pilot or a driver of an F1 race car, and you can see that the crash is about to happen, and it's about what can you do to mitigate that disaster coming, oh, I need to turn this way and I need to predict this thing happening. And so the conductor's job is to work out, where is everybody? We're all supposed to be like this, but we're like this or this in all sorts of different places, and prioritise, okay, who needs the attention right now? Who can be left alone, they'll work it out for themselves. There might be people sitting there resting, but they're about to come in and they don't know, should I go with those people or I should go with those people? And the conductor's job is to try and, without anyone in the audience knowing, try and re-synchronise everyone in the room. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Do you guys have any like war stories of things going wrong in performances? Can we grab that microphone again? Because I know they've thought about this without mentioning any names.
The whole point of the story was to mention names. It didn't necessarily involve the orchestra falling apart, but it involved the conductor falling off the podium. We were close to the end. We had literally 30 seconds of a symphony left, and I won't name names. He's a very well-loved conductor who conducts us regularly. Haven't seen him in a while though, COVID. But he was coming to the end and was putting so much energy into one of the beats of the bar, using both hands to really, determine where that beat was going. And his energy went that way and his body went that way. And considering the height of a conductor's podium, he fell literally horizontally, I should say, on flat of his back. The sound was incredible, but the orchestra had to keep going. It ground to a halt. So this is where a conductor is absolutely indispensable. When there's that many people on a stage all at once, at some point it will fall apart without their guidance. So that's probably the worst thing I've ever seen. He was fine. He was fine.
I think what I don't need that. I think what David's story alluded to is that the more people there are in the ensemble and the more complicated the music is, the more a conductor is needed. And so obviously these guys could play to their heart's content without a conductor, and having a conductor would almost be interference with all the communication that goes on. We've got time for a couple of questions before our grand finale. Does anyone have any questions about conducting?
Because you're both channeling and expressing any number of those emotions up there, has conducting ever brought you to tears?
Yes, it has. I had a really special performance. It's a long time ago now, but it's the one that I always think of. And it was with a group of high school musicians. And it was after the Black Saturday bushfires had happened in Melbourne. And this school where I was teaching was really close to where the fires had happened. And I spent a long time trying to find a piece of music that would help everyone work through the emotions that we had felt in that time, and people in the community had been lost. And we worked so hard on this piece. It was by an Australian composer, and it was about her losing her dad. And so we were kind of mirroring this grief journey together. And the performance was absolutely extraordinary, and I was crying and all the kids were crying, and it was, I can still feel that welling up in my body now telling the story. So yes, you can be moved to tears, but you have to still keep it together to keep leading everyone.
I was wondering, as this is intended to reproduce the emotions of the composer, are there any conflict between the conductors and maybe musicians that want to express a different emotion?
They're all laughing and nodding because the answer is yes. So one of the biggest challenges about being a conductor is, even if you're really old and have been conducting for ages, you still have only a fraction of the musical experience of the people, the collective experience of the people in front of you. And everyone, particularly in a professional group, is really experienced, has so much musical knowledge. There's 80 opinions in the room of how the music should go, and probably, maybe like half of one maybe matches what the conductor thinks. And so that's the great delicacy of our leadership, is trying to compel everyone and convince everyone that we're going to do this version today, even though there's all these other different versions that we could do. Just like we heard all of our different versions of Twinkle Twinkle and Danny Boy that all came from the same text. But there's so many different versions of everything. And it also changes from moment to moment and from performance to performance. It's a great question. That's like the hardest thing, is trying to keep everybody happy, which we don't do a very good job of usually. Yeah, one more.
Oh, okay. Could you tell us a bit about the baton? Like, are they all the same? What are they made of? Where do you buy them? And why do some people use them and some people not?
Great question. They're often, so we've got the shaft, which is the white bit, and the handle. Usually the shaft is made of wood, or it could be made of carbon fibre, this one, so it's a bit lighter. And the handles come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and made out of all different things. Some people have no handle at all, it's just a stick. There's ones that look like a ball, there's, you name it, different sizes for different size hands. This one's a fancy one, it's got foam on it, so when my hand sweats I don't drop it, which is always helpful. And they all balance in different ways, and that gives you, they feel different in your hand. So you can really geek out. You buy them at a music shop. There's lots of people that make them as well. There's a couple of fantastic Australian baton makers. And they're way cheaper than every other instrument on the stage. And they're the only one that doesn't make any sound. So it's a pretty cheap profession to get into. But it's really just used to be an extension of the arm, which also makes it, for these guys who sit up the back of the orchestra, much easier to see from far away, and the white usually contrasts with whatever the conductor's wearing. And it can give you a little bit more precision compared to what your hand can do. If we do the same movement, and they kind of will give a different sound with the ensemble. So some people use this all the time, some people never use it, and some people will switch. And I'm sure you've had conductors that will put it down like in the middle of a piece and then do something and then pick it up again. And horses for courses, really. So we've learned just the tip of the iceberg about conducting. If you want to learn more, there's a whole bunch of resources that you can check out if you take a photo of this QR code. I've got a bunch of YouTube videos and podcasts, so if you're curious about conducting, you can take a photo of that either now or at the end. But right now we're going to get up and do one last bit of conducting in pretty much the most famous classical piece there is. TSO did a performance of the whole piece earlier this year. This is the uber famous tune from Beethoven's Symphony No. 9, the Ode to Joy. So you are going to show us your most joyous body right now, everyone, and your most joyous face as we are all together going to conduct the theme from Ode to Joy. Here we go. Ready? Arms up, looking joyful, big breath together. Non-verbal communication. Can we thank again our fabulous musicians from the TSO? In particular, we'd love to thank Tim for his awesome arrangements of all the music today. And Jenny from TSO that has made this possible, Margot and all of the team at Beaker Street. I hope that this has whet your appetite for conducting and that we will see you at a TSO performance very soon. Enjoy the rest of the festival.
How good were her conductor faces? So good. One more time for Maestro Ingrid Martin. And one for you and your amazing conducting. So good. Now, that doesn't have to be the end of your learning experience. Conductingartistry.com is the ye olde way of finding the website, which I think is linked to that, conductingartistry.com. You can find more, so it doesn't have to be the end of your conducting journey, but it does have to be the end of your time in this room. If you're coming back in for the debate next, you do need to go out and then come back in. So enjoy some more Beaker Street. Great.